In today's video, we talk about carbs with Troy from South Africa. What's going on, guys? This is Paul Ravella from Physique.com, and in today's video I have an exciting guest, my friend Troy Theodosu, all the way from South Africa.
Hey, great to be with you today. Thanks, Paul.
So Troy reached out to me last year because he was interested in competing, and what I've come to understand from Troy is that prior to working with me, he's had quite a bit of a journey through different various nutrition styles, training styles. But what's exciting this week is that you're going to be competing in a show in Ormond Beach, Florida. It's a drug-free event, and he's going to be doing men's physique. And so what I thought we would talk about today, because I like doing these like client videos where we actually discuss like real life journeys. And you mentioned to me the idea that carbohydrates tended to be something that were kind of frowned upon. So let's talk a little bit about your history before you worked with me, how you got to that point, and then we'll discuss like some of the specifics behind, you know, the training and nutrition to get you how you've done this transformation.
Sure. So I came from an endurance background. In 2012, I did Ironman. I did the half Ironman and I did the full Ironman. And because I was doing so much endurance work, I never really had a diet per se. There was so much cardiovascular activity and I was spending so much time training that I really wasn't too fazed about what I was putting in my body. I knew that I needed to put food and substance into my body for energy, but it wasn't, there weren't too many specifics involved.
Sure. So I think you mentioned to me that some of those training sessions would last like 4 to 6 hours per day.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so for those that aren't familiar with Ironman, it's, tell me the specifics of each leg, the swim, the bike, and the run.
So you've got a 180 kilometer cycle.
Well, we'll just do it in kilometers and I'll put it on the screen.
Yeah, so, and then you've got a full marathon. So you finish off with a full marathon and you start with
that's 26 miles, by the way.
Yeah, so you've got to, and then you've got to start with a 3 kilometer swim. So you've got a 3 kilometer swim to start. Then you get on the bike, and the bike can last anywhere between 4 to 6 hours, which is really draining. And then you come off the bike. You've been seated for a really long time, and then you've got to run a full marathon. So it's
running a marathon is ridiculous by itself. So that is definitely why they call it the Ironman. So let's talk about transitioning from that. What got you interested in kind of the physique sports, or like, you know, more, you know, it's less of an endurance event and more of an event where you're focused on changing the way your physique looks?
Sure. So that's a really good question, because I can elaborate quite nicely. Being able to do an endurance event becomes really lonely, long hours as mentioned, but I just felt I could run like a Kenyan, and it wasn't always fun. It was quite a chore. But I didn't like the fact that I felt so weak. Okay. I couldn't do a pull-up. I didn't have much of a physique at all. So I would look at guys in the gym and be like, wow, you know, they look really good. Yeah. And because I'm a tall guy like you, you know, you don't look like you've got much of a physique at all. Right. You just look tall and skinny. Yeah. So
I know those feelings.
Yeah. So I was going to gym and I was merely ticking a box. I looked at myself. I was pretty normal. I was an average guy. Right. And I just got to the point where I was tired of ticking the box, and being like, okay, I've been to gym, and it became so much more for me than that. It became this challenge of radically wanting to transform the way I looked aesthetically.
Yeah. So I think it's an important message, because it's kind of what drew me into the sport as well. Like when I would see somebody that had a look to them, I would want that. And You know, the one thing, because I did run long distances when I played baseball, and I actually enjoyed, you know, running, you know, races. It was something that you never brought with you. Like, if you were to walk into a room of crowded people, you just come off as someone who's kind of thin, right? Yeah. Whereas if you lift weights, you take that with you everywhere you go.
Absolutely.
People recognize right away, okay, this guy does stuff with the gym and with his health, and he's, you know, he's taking care of himself. So there was something that I always admired about that. Like, you know, when you see someone who's got a great physique in public, you like, you know, you feel like you know something about them.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the first thing you notice when a person walks into a room, because their posture's different. Right. Chest out, shoulders back. Right. They look the part.
So let's talk a little bit about the nutrition aspect, because I think something that rang true with me yesterday was the fact that you mentioned you kind of feared carbs, and that was something that you had to conquer, was the idea that using carbohydrates for the proper purpose was of benefit.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about a little bit about your history with even awareness of nutrition, and then kind of where we've gotten to now.
Sure. So the carbohydrate for a lot of people, including myself, is a scary thought, because people associate weight gain with carbohydrates. Sure. And
stay in frame.
And so when you realize that if you harness the carbohydrate to use as a source of fuel, for recovery and building your metabolism and muscular development, the carbohydrate is why I am where I am today.
Sure.
So understanding how a carbohydrate can actually do the direct opposite and not make you fat or overweight or obese was the greatest thing I ever learned.
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about a sedentary lifestyle, and you're talking about a carbohydrate being the best source of energy, if you're sedentary, then we might have an issue with carbohydrates. But for the person that's training rigorously, and I mean, if you did an Ironman, I mean, I know you called yourself an average person. No average person has ever completed an Ironman. So you're not average at all. And then you followed that up by getting into contest condition. He's going to be competing this weekend, so he looks fantastic. So taking that out of the equation, I think carbohydrates are very feared and undervalued, because, you know, they get a lot of bad publicity, a lot of bad press. But I am a coach who believes in maximizing carbohydrate use for what you said, energy recovery. You know, it's, in my opinion, the greatest variable. You know, protein and fats, they need to be where they need to be, but carbohydrates are the greatest variable for recovery. And as he's seen this week, where his carbohydrates have come up, you've noticed a big improvement, right, in training?
Unbelievable. You feel like a different person. You go in and you lift weights, and it feels easy. It feels too easy. It's almost like you've got the superpower.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about South Africa, obviously. So let's talk about what you're doing is obviously pretty unique, even by American standards, but how is it received where you live? So,
very interesting question again. Back in South Africa, there are a number of different federations, and they're supposedly drug-free, but we all know that they're not. So in order for me to compete in a natural competition as a South African, I have to come to the United States or compete in Europe. So very different. A level playing field. I will humbly lose or not place, knowing that the guy that's won has worked just as hard as I have. But it's very degrading to put in the amount of time, hard work and effort that I have to lose to somebody who I know has taken shortcuts.
Sure. And then, you know, there's no perfect system, and granted, like, no shows, no guaranteed, but, you know, as I've discussed with him and other people, like, there is an option in bodybuilding and physique competitions where you have two options. You can take the route of the untested or the tested. Whereas when you're talking about either, you know, cyclists or, you know, professional baseball players or any professional sportsman, there's no drug-free leagues. So those guys tend to mask what they're doing because of the money involved and things like that. With natural bodybuilding, for the most part, I mean, I can't really even think of any cases where someone was trying to cheat the system, and especially at a small show like this, you're just gonna have a good time. It's gonna be very enjoyable. So, all right, guys. Well, that's it for Troy. I really appreciate his time. The fact that he flew over here, you know, it was a conversation that we'd had like last year. I mean, it was a discussion, and once you got here, I just was excited to see you and see how great you look. So I really appreciate you making the effort to come over, and I'm excited to see you compete this weekend.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Any messages for the YouTube now that you're going to be on my channel?
Yeah, Paul has been amazing. I'm so at peace, so comfortable, and really excited. So if you thought about coaching or thought about getting on stage or thinking about it, look no further. I'm living proof of what can be done.
Cool. Well, we'll get some shots of him real quick, and I'll overlay him during the video. And if you guys have any questions or comments for Troy, he's going to be in a hotel room all week with some time to kill. So I'll have him get in the comment sections, and I'll try to get my dog to stop barking.